Right, hi everybody. Thanks for joining. Welcome to this Safe Landing Airside Chat. My name's Finlay Asher. I'm an aerospace engineer, and I'm part of Safe Landing. I'm the think tank lead at our organization. Safe Landing is a global community of aviation workers, students, enthusiasts, people that care about the future of our industry and also the future of our planet. We're really keen to use our unique perspective as those that work in the aviation industry to help steer our sector towards more sustainable skies, and a future of clean flight that can help preserve the beauty and the joy of flying, for future generations to come. So we really want to improve our knowledge, help to promote like ways of low carbon and zero carbon flying. Really keen to hear from industry experts, people that are innovating in this space, and accelerating the transition. And that's the purpose of these airside chats. So yeah, today I'm really delighted to be joined by Guy Haydon of AEROVOLT. Welcome,
Hey.
Guy. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Thank you for the delay from last week. I do apologise, but as I said, it's the life of having three small children with germs. So we got there in the end.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Do you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself and to your company?
Yeah, so I am Guy Haydon. I'm Chief Commercial Officer for AeroVolt, and we have the honour of being able to say we are building the world's first public charging network for electric aircraft.
So I guess just starting a bit on the personal side of the story, could you just kind of talk us through a bit of your journey to this point? Like, how did you get into working on electric vehicles, and then sustainable aviation?
Yeah, so well, I can give you a longer potted history. My first job out of college, I always wanted to fly aircraft. Don't come from, a background where I can go and afford to do that. As you can imagine, it's quite expensive to learn to be a pilot. So I joined the Navy out of college because I wanted to be Top Gun and fly the F-35 and all the rest of it. So flying has always been something I wanted to do. And then I did the selection, got into the Royal Navy, and was medically discharged for having a peanut allergy. So the peanut thing was the end of my glittering Top Gun career after only a few months. So the aviation thing stayed with me. And I'd moved and lived abroad and ended up working for a Czech electric motorcycle manufacturer. So I built a business along with my wife, which was successful, completely different business in the world of language, language school, language services. And that business was successful. And then I I fell into working for what looked to be a really cool business in the Czech Republic, building off-road electric motorbikes, and loved the world of electrification. So that kind of set me down this path, and I wanted to stay in electrification. So moved back to the UK to do that. It was at the time where the first Nissan Leaf had just come out and the charging networks were young and setting up. So I went into the world of EV charging, and that was first of all for a company called Instavolt, who, if you drive an electric car in the UK, you might know. So I did business development for Instavolt, helped them grow their network in the early days. Then I joined Siemens. So I was head of sales for Siemens Electromobility in the UK. So we did things like London's TfL taxi network. We did the Coventry taxi network, the Birmingham taxi network, different things, kind of more in the public space. And then I was managing director of a charge point company, a Norwegian charge point company, and set that up in the UK. So grew that business out. And then one day I got a phone call from somebody I know in the industry who said, I spoke to this guy who's got a crazy idea of starting an electric aircraft charging market network. Do you want to talk to him? And I said yes. And 2.5 years later, here we are.
Nice, yeah. And I guess like electric bikes, like back 10 years ago, it was a pretty good initial use of batteries, right? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it was the small light thing, you weren't creating noise, and it meant that electric bikes, electric motorbikes, it meant you could take them places that you couldn't take, petrol bikes back then. And I really loved the freedom of that and the opportunities that electrification gave us. So the car industry was like a natural fit, and now having gone full circle back to planes. Yes, not the F-35, admittedly, but back to planes.
I personally worked on the F-35 back in 2012, so a little bit of a connection there.
Yep.
So tell us more about AEROVOLT, the company. What's the mission of the company? What are you working on now, and what are your plans?
Yeah, so I mean, the car industry reference is a useful one because there's a lot of shorthand for the growth there. And I often use the analogy electric aircraft is where the car industry was when the first Nissan Leaf came out. So, those of you that are familiar with electrification of aircraft, the Pipistrel Velis, I compare to the Nissan Leaf. It's a great aircraft, it's a good demonstrator of what's possible, it's been popular with early adopters. It has good capabilities, but the capabilities do need to go further. But that's very much a good solid starting point, the same as the Leaf was. And Aerovolt, we're building a charging network. So if you look across the OEMs, certainly on the light aircraft end of things, they all are either currently flight testing electric aircraft, have production already started for electric aircraft and will be delivering to customers, or they're earlier on in their electrification journey, but absolutely they have projects. So what we're doing is, as I say, we're building the world's first charging network. So it's a public charging network. Fly in, tap a card, charge your plane the same as you would charge a car.
Nice, yeah. And do you want to? I think you had a couple of slides, kind of just showing exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, I
Do
can
you
do
want
that.
to get those up? Um, but
One
yeah,
second. So hopefully everybody can see this. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint, I promise. Right. Can everybody see
yeah,
this?
that's good.
Jolly good. So, Aerovolt, as I've said. So, again, world's first charge point operator for electric aircraft. Now, we take the view that anything that flies with a battery, we want to be able to charge it. So that can include eVTOL or air taxis, they're sometimes called, could include drones, could include larger aircraft. I'm very big on what I call the art of the possible. And the art of the possible in aviation at the moment is light aircraft, right? So it's small two-seaters, four-seaters. Those are the things that are either in the market now, already being used by flight schools, or the things that flight schools are ordering strongly, right? So yes, we're not yet decarbonizing a 777, right? But it does mean that certainly flight training and the lighter end of the market, there's answers to how we can electrify, decarbonize that right now. We never set out as a business, frankly, to have a mission of decarbonizing aviation. We set out to build infrastructure to allow this technology to exist and to grow. And essentially, decarbonisation, sustainability, and all the wins around that are a nice outcome. So, our network, currently, we've got live sites across the south coast of the UK. So, not a render, not a concept, a real thing being used by flight schools. And we have a pipeline now of airports across UK, US, some in mainland Europe, and some in Australia, all to be built out. So, there's in fact more than 250 airports in our pipeline. So, I've got a lot of cash to put in the ground, as you can imagine.
Do you just on the number of do you have a kind of rough number in terms of like the number of those types of aircraft that are used for flight schools, like either in the UK or
So in the UK, there are currently 13. So it's a big number. But in the US, there's more. And if you look across electric aircraft, there's actually over 16,000 electric aircraft of different types currently on order. And on the training market, we work very closely with the OEMs of the aircraft, as you can imagine. So the next, let's say, big trainer coming to market is called the Bristol Energic. When that went and toured the US, they took our charger with them because we're part of the story. So we know the flight schools out in the US that have ordered 10 aircraft, 8 aircraft, 6 aircraft, and there's certainly a lot to be done with co-locating chargers for them as they bring them online. But these are aircraft that have all of the capabilities that the schools need and, you know, operationally work, plus save them loads of money. So again, coming back to sustainability and decarbonisation, that's a nice that outcome as opposed to an aim. And when you've got something that's has all the capabilities and saves you load of money, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? So in addition to putting chargers in the ground, we've also built our own proprietary aircraft and charger management platform in the background. So if you're a pilot, you're flying into somewhere, you can book your charging. You can also use it to book and manage aircraft. But interesting to probably the people on this call is we're also integrating that with the world's leading flight planning tools. So you can plan flights according to where charging is. And we're also integrating it with the leading in cockpit avionics providers. So again, same as in your electric car, you can see where chargers are. You'll be able to see that in your plane. And probably a lot of you know Octopus Electroverse. We're big on interoperability. So if you have the Octopus app and go on it right now, you can filter by aircraft charging. Equally, you can rock up to one of our chargers and charge your plane. If you happen to own an electric plane, you can use the Octopus app to do that.
Cool.
So, as I said, those are some of the sites that we've done. It's not a render, it's not a concept, it is a real thing. We have chargers out there being used, and that is our lovely Pipistrel Velis that you can see in the pictures. So, yeah. One cool thing we also did last year, I should mention, with our Velis. If you haven't yet seen it, we did the world's first electric car versus electric plane race with these two guys that you might know. It was their biggest performing video on YouTube last year as well. So, yeah, we do some interesting things in the background. And that is me done for slides, Finley. You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to add a bit of color to the description, and yeah, your latest charger design there. So yeah, just on that charger,
Mhm.
what is sort of unique about your charger, and and the kind of you talked a bit about the services you do, but just I guess for someone thinking about this, charging their electric car, charging their electric aircraft, is there like some fundamental differences there in the capability of the charger and the way it works?
I'm going to use a technical term now. The gubbins. The gubbins inside is
Yeah.
car charger. All of the stuff inside these chargers, it's borrowed from the car charging industry. There's not a whole lot of difference. Even the charge standard, i.e., the plug on the end, is now from now and into the future going to be a CCS charger, which again, it's all car charging tech. So, in terms of differences, there's not a whole lot. The two major ones, however, are it has to be certified for use in aviation, which, as you can imagine, aviation is a bit like the word wedding in my experience. It just adds zeros to the cost of something. So it needs to be aviation certified, and there's not a lot of those chargers in the market. And the second element is the communication standard is different, i.e., if you plugged a car into an aviation certified charger, it wouldn't talk to each other, it wouldn't charge. And that's kind of for obvious reasons. We don't want people rocking up and plugging cars in. So there's not a whole lot of technical difference, but there's a couple of kind of, uh, regulatory or de facto differences.
Yeah. Like just I suppose just on that, I was going to ask you this later, but just you were saying about like plugging in vehicles.
Mhm.
Obviously, in an airport, you've got a bunch of ground service equipment like baggage trucks, fuel trucks, water trucks. That it makes
Yep.
a lot of sense to convert those from diesel power with emissions to electric, they're probably cheaper and cleaner for air pollution and stuff as well.
Mhm.
Would if like an airport installed some of these, is it then like possible to w- like use that to charge those type of ground vehicles, or would you have like the same network, but then you'd have like different charging units for one for the aircraft, one for the ground vehicles?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, but I'll give you the long answer. So our model, which I haven't really gone into, is we don't sell chargers. So if you own an airport, I come to you and I say, I'd like to lease a bit of your land for the next 15, 20 years. We put in all of the money. So all of the capex, all of the opex, that's on us. It doesn't cost the airport anything. And then there's a profit share mechanism with the airport. So essentially, to the airport, it's free, and they have the system that they can offer charging services. Um, I have been asked, as you can imagine, about ground vehicles and that side of things. And yeah, frankly, the electrification of airport ground vehicles for me, I will admit I don't run airports, so there will be experts who know more about this than me. I've never run Heathrow or Gatwick. But for me, the electrification of ground vehicles on an airport is kind of low-hanging fruit. It's an easy win. They know, the duty cycles of these vehicles. They don't vary a whole lot. They don't have to do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. So I think that absolutely can be done. Would we be open to doing that? Yes, we would. It wouldn't be the same kind of charger. It would be different, but it would make sense, right? So we haven't done it yet, but absolutely it could be part of the future.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And so if I was going to ask you, yeah, just on sort of the early adopters of this, you mentioned flight schools already being the really obvious one. What do you see as kind of like the next stepping stone after that in terms of the first people that might be looking at this as well?
Yeah. So again, art of the possible. Like you see money being ploughed into and designs of big aircraft. And I think longer term that will come to market. But what's possible now and in the near term future is kind of my focus. So yes, flight schools, yes, trainers, yes, even hobby flyers that want to go electric. That is all here and now. In the relatively foreseeable future, like short-term future, let's say the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, um, Robinson Helicopters announced that they want their first electric flying later this year, a variant of their R66 popular helicopter. I also think that the eVTOL air taxi companies, the leading ones in that space have already started to deliver some experimental, yes, but aircraft flying aircraft to customers. And if there can be found models and places that they work, I think we might start to see a bit more of that. But I also think that often overlooked in aviation is like short regional services. So the likes of Logan Air operating up in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, or Air New Zealand doing island hopping around there. There's a foreseeable future that is pretty tangible that once aircraft get to, let's say, small business jet type size, there's going to be viable alternatives for those services as well. So again, it brings me back to yes, it's not a 777, but with tech we've got today or stuff that's already flying or being flight tested, there's real tangible stuff we can do.
Yeah, as someone that lives in Scotland and really likes visiting the Western Isles and the northwest of
Yep.
Scotland, I'm quite excited to get that first electric flight from somewhere near Glasgow to Lewis or
I'll do my best for you. That's all I'll say. I'll do my best.
there's a island on the Isle of Barra that has a beach as the runway, so it'll be interesting to see where you put the charger there
Put a
as
charger
well.
on a beach. Yeah. Bear with me. I'll see what I can do. Yeah.
So just that overview then of where have you installed the chargers now, and like where are you looking to roll it out to? You're saying like you've got quite a few in the UK, but there's growth in the UK, and you're also looking at the US. Um,
Yeah, so there are, as I say, live sites across the south coast of the UK. That's where we are at the moment. Had fundraising not been a long and challenging journey, we'd have a lot more. But we have grown out a pipeline of airports who want what we're doing. So our pipeline, as I said, is UK. So we've got about 120 something airports in the UK that want what we're doing. Speaking completely plainly, the UK is pretty small, right? So once we've done 70, 80 airports here, there or thereabouts, maybe a few more, um, that probably covers our geography, right? For everything that we need here for the foreseeable. But a big focus for us, as you can imagine, biggest general aviation market in the world is the US. So we have a pipeline of sites across currently, kind of the focus areas are Texas, Florida, California. We have some sites in Colorado as well because there's some quite forward-thinking flight schools out there. And then in Europe, it's a mix of different places, but there will be a focus on where the aircraft are being produced. So I mentioned earlier that kind of next generation trainer that's going to be delivered to customers later this year and into next. That is a Czech Swiss build. So the airframes are produced in Czech Republic. So I dare say we'll end up with some chargers there. And also Switzerland, where H55, the powertrain builders, are based, do a lot of flight testing. So I think those will probably be our first European sites. But we've got, a lot of interest in France and Germany and different places. And then in Australia, slightly further afield, there's quite a lot of flight training and general aviation goes on around Melbourne. So yes, been out to Melbourne, visited some sunny airports with good busy flight schools. So I think yeah, down the line we'll absolutely seed our network out there as well.
So what have you got a bit of a vision for, how you see the air travel evolving? If we take urgent action to electrify air travel over the next few decades, like how do you see that progressing?
I mean, that's the big question, right? I I am of the view, again, grounded art of the possible, right? I am of the view that the electrification of what we currently have and battery tech, there's a limit to that. Battery technology needs to improve. So whether it's light to medium business jet, above that becomes challenging from an electrification perspective from where we're at now. I think sustainable aviation fuel, hydrogen, a mix of different things will have a kind of a place, a part to play above that. But really, the answer, Finley, is ask me in 5, 10 years, you know?
Do you think, just in terms of like, so I think one thing is like electric aircraft are limited in terms of their payload and range. It's quite ex interesting what we can do if we do a bit hybrid, which I think makes actually more sense than it does in cars because you can get some of the benefits of electrification,
Mhm.
but also some of the additional range from the energy density of jet fuel.
Yep.
Um, so like what do you see as like the benefits, let's say if the UK accelerates this or France or Switzerland, the economic benefits that will come from that in terms of, you know, pioneering this type of technology in terms of the aircraft and the airports.
I think in any kind of evolution, and I will use the word evolution, not revolution, like we're not going to completely revolutionize aviation overnight, but we are certainly at a period, probably the biggest, the next decade is probably going to be the biggest change in aviation we've seen since it started. And there is an opportunity, an economic opportunity for the countries that put a flag in the ground and invest and, just kind of stake their claim to be technological leaders in that. Um, I don't know what the tangible benefits of that are, and I don't know who's going to win. But again, I think it's a bit of a crystal ball territory, if I'm honest. I know that's not the world's best answer, but
Well, like yeah, like some of the stuff we're quite excited in is, in terms of the UK, we had quite a strong automotive industry and the same in Europe. And with electrification, we've been a bit slow off the mark. And that
mm,
means we're kind of behind in electric motor technology and battery technology and that kind of thing. But when it comes to aviation, we do need motors and batteries, but they need to be different, higher performance, more safety, lower volume, but more greater engineered for some of the reasons you were talking about with
mm.
aviation certification. So about having some of that clean technology, having the skills and the manufacturing that where yeah we could actually have a bit of a lead and also be developing skills for the workforce that's useful in other sectors as well.
I think,
Um,
I mean, on that, yeah. So if you're talking about a UK centric view, the UK is and has a long history of being a technological leader across lots of sectors. Certainly in aviation, we've always had a very strong aviation sector. The issue I think we've got is we perhaps are not bold enough with our investment in this country, and we are not forward thinking enough, and we are not risky enough, you know? I think the risk aversion that comes with long established businesses isn't necessarily the best recipe for innovation. So I'm not saying that long-standing British businesses should be the ones to do this, but we do have young, interesting businesses in this country who are being innovative. And if they were supported, I think a little better, or regulation supported them a little better, then yes, we as the UK perhaps do have an opportunity to do well in this space.
nice, yeah. And do you think
Politician's answer.
yeah, yeah. So do you think like you're saying a bit about this, but do you think like electric flight, once it moves from the flight schools to taking some paying passengers, and there will be smaller craft to begin with, do you think that there's a possibility there that it sort of regenerates? regional airports that are maybe underutilized at the moment. So they're sort of small local ones, and we have more kind of direct aviation where you fly from somewhere locally to where you live if you don't live near one of the big airports today, and you can go more direct to where you want to go. And we've got a bit of a more distributed network of those smaller electric type airports.
Um, I've got two answers to that. One answer is sort of absolutely, it is an opportunity, and regional aviation in this country and smaller airports have for a long time been hampered by kind of two things. One is pollution, and one is noise. Okay, so over urban areas or even nice countryside airports, noise complaints and restriction of movements and pollution are like their number one problems. That's top of the list. And any technology that removes that as a barrier means more people can go flying, right? And whether that's as, a hobbyist or whether it's learning to fly as a hobby or whether it's learning to fly with a view to going into aviation or whether it is more regional services, removing those kind of top barriers, yeah, absolutely gives us an opportunity. And I like that. I like that as an idea of the future. But I also don't want to let the rail companies off the hook. So that's my my kind of caveat to it. But yeah, we need a better rail system. So let's not make it too easy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's kind of the way I would think about it is we need a multi-mode
Yeah.
transport system where when we could take a bus or a train that's electrified, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe if you're going from one of those Scottish islands, or if you're in Dublin or Belfast to get over to UK, or indeed like from the UK to from Scotland to Scandinavia, that kind of thing. If you take the train,
Yep.
it'll takes you a couple of days really, but you could actually get across the North Sea in an hour or so, and doing that fully electric. That's quite exciting.
I'm
Um,
sure you felt the pain of trying to get from Scotland to London, and that is the kind of journey that could be covered by the types of aircraft that are flight testing now. Again, not big picture, not pie in the sky stuff. Things that are coming to market could provide those services. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, there's a beach in Aberdeen where there was the first flight from Scotland to Norway,
Okay.
and it was about 100 years ago. So it's
Yep.
quite interesting to see like maybe we'll be able to kind of complete that feat again, but in an electric powered aircraft,
Sounds
and
good.
break some of those records.
It sounds
Yeah,
like I
so
need to do another beach-based charger as well, but
yeah. So yeah, just a kind of final couple of questions then. When it comes to government, you're talking a bit about like support for this and incentives. How do you think this industry could be most like what would support you to put wind in your sails so that you can accelerate this, get as many flight schools as possible, as quickly as possible, and move on to bigger things as well? Is there anything that would be your particular ask if you had, the energy secretary or the transport secretary in a room together?
yeah, I mean, my personal view of the world when it comes to regulation, particularly around innovative, new, first of a kind type stuff, let it happen. Don't stand in the way of it. I'm a fan of less regulation. However, some of the regulatory frameworks around carbon credits is an example of one where it can funnel money into good stuff, into good tech. Now, carbon credits, carbon offsets, can be a bit of a wishy-washy world, but you may have seen a couple of weeks ago we actually launched a carbon offset scheme. So that is a mechanism whereby a an airline, a jet operator, any business in fact, but we have had good traction already in the world of jet operators. So let's take that. It means a jet operator can purchase an offset with us, and we use that money to put infrastructure in the ground and subsidize the cost of electric flight. So it's rather than an offset, it's actually an avoidance. They're putting money into something that ultimately will train future pilots on electric aircraft, get more people into electric, get more flight training happening on electric. So that kind of insetting within aviation of carbon is great. Now, we're on the voluntary markets for that at the moment, and frankly, we've had good traction. Businesses are interested in buying those credits because it's a strong story. We're cheaper than SAF, to be honest. And it's, as I say, it's an avoidance, not kind of a wishy-washy offset. Um, there are frameworks for regulatory compliance. like ETS, Corsia, etc. We are not on those regulatory frameworks at the minute, meaning those businesses that have to offset under a regulation can't purchase regulatory credits from us. If I had a magic wand, it would be quite nice to be on those because then, of course, it allows operators to be able to buy or fulfill some of their regulatory requirements with the AEROVOLT carbon credits than by putting money into electric aviation. But having said that, I can't really criticize uh, the makeup of those frameworks because when they were written, nobody foresaw there being an electric aircraft charging network. So it is simply it was written of its time, and that's probably something that can and probably will at some point change.
Yeah, as an organization, we've talked quite a lot about carbon offsetting. There's a lot of problems with it, and stories of lack of permanence, lack of traceability,
Yeah.
and also just the fact we're still deforesting the planet, and we're sort of claiming that neutralizes emissions. So that definitely is actually have it displacing fossil fuel in aviation makes a lot more sense. And
Yep.
just to add to what you're saying about the emissions trading. There's also the SAF mandate in the UK or Refuel EU in Europe, where there is a mandate, but that mandate isn't getting met, and
Yep.
there's penalties. And we would like to see like that opened up a bit so that we don't try and shoehorn in just more land intensive biofuels or something instead, and kind of actually look to stimulate this market to actually decarbonize the industry.
Yep. Here,
Um,
here.
So yeah, final question, and then we'll open it up to everyone else. So what advice would you give, like people on this call, or aviation workers, students, in our community if they're wanting to get into, electric aviation and that kind of thing?
I'm not sure I'm the one to give career advice, and that's only because I took a weird and wonderful route to get where I am. But those that are interested in it, and actually there's a wider kind of perception point. It is not pie in the sky, all about renders, all about the future. These things are happening now. So there are really cool, innovative companies, whether it's building a charging network, whether it is building software, whether it is building physical aircraft, battery systems, powertrains, all that kind of stuff, battery technology, going all the way back to, the principles of it. There's lots happening in aviation, a surprising amount, in fact. So if you are interested in it, I think it's a case of now is the time to get on board. It is where the car industry was 10, 11 years ago. And now's the time to really push on and join what we're trying to do.